First of all, if I could have your attention, I'd like to welcome you to the Capitol Briefings portion of today's events. As you can see from the room, we're just about full. We're down to standing room only. We can't get quite everybody that was at the Marriott into this room, which is why we've got a television screen and speakers in the hall for those that weren't able to get in. But this is a vital part of the day. Allow you an opportunity to come over to the Capitol, not only hear from our legislative leadership, but give you an opportunity to talk to your legislators and others that you know as well while you're here. So we appreciate your being here. We appreciate the speakers that will be speaking this morning, and we'll go ahead and get started right now and get kicked off. Our first speaker this morning is the Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn. When I started working in this role about 10 years ago, I got an opportunity to visit with the Speaker, and we'd talk about politics, of course, but we'd also talk about his sons and their baseball and other things. But I learned from those conversations the type of leader that he was. And it's obvious that leadership really continues to grow is because on Monday, the House of Representatives, again, voted him to a second term as Speaker of the House. During his time in serving as Speaker, he's made some great accomplishments, especially for those of us in business. In his first year as Speaker, one of his key initiatives was reforming workers' compensation, and what a big difference that's made in the state. He's also focused diligently on working to make our education system better, finding new ways to do things with education to make sure that our students have an opportunity at those careers that you heard about this morning. He truly is a leader, and that's the reason the House of Representatives was so emphatic in putting him back in that role on Monday. Please welcome Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn. But I messed up. I did it again. I forgot to mention one important thing. I did this last year. He's a graduate of Baylor and of the University of Mississippi Law School, and at Baylor he played quarterback, something that's extremely important, and now he's quarterbacking the House of Representatives. So please welcome Philip Gunn.
I appreciate the introduction, Scott. Wherever you went, there you are. Was reelected Tuesday, almost unanimously. Missed it by one vote. I don't know how many of you saw or paid attention, but there were a series of votes that came up before we got to the Speaker's vote. And if you've ever been in the House of Representatives, you know sometimes when it's a voice vote, it can get very loud in there because people yell their vote. They yell aye or they yell no. And the noes had been yelling very loudly for about 3 or 4 votes. And so when it came time to elect Speaker, they said all those in favor say aye, and there was a loud aye. And then when they said no, a 5-year-old child who had been in the room listening to everybody yell no, yelled out loudly, no! So I was hopeful to get a unanimous selection, but I fell 1 vote short of that. It is a privilege to be serving in that capacity. It's the highest honor of my life, I guess, to be serving as the Speaker of the House of the State of Mississippi. And it's even more special because your colleagues elect you to that position. And so I'm looking forward to another 4-year term, hopefully to do some of the great things that we've done over the last 4 years. Someone asked me, what are we going to do this next term? I said, probably much of the same. We focused very hard over the last 4 years on getting our budget in order. I don't know how many of you paid attention to that, but when we took over 4 years ago, and I say we, I'm talking about Republicans, for the first time in 136 years, the predecessors had had a practice of spending more money than we have to spend. They were spending beyond what we had to spend. We were plugging holes in our budget with about $600 million that we didn't have to spend, what we call one-time money. This would be money that comes in one time, like BP oil spill money, Katrina recovery money. The Attorney General may sue somebody and get a settlement check. It's money that's coming in one time, and it ain't gonna be there next year. When you budget on money like that, you create an expenditure and you're not sure where that money's gonna come from next year. It's a bad practice. It's not something you should do in your personal life. It's not something you should do in your business life. It's not something that government should do. We should not spend more money than we know is coming in, the recurring dollars, so to speak. There was $600 million being spent in that manner. We not only have stopped that practice, but we have $400 million in the bank. My chairman of appropriations describes it as a $1 billion swing. Come on in, Blake. Glad you could make it.
How are you doing, Mr. Speaker?
It's all right. He describes that as a $1 billion swing. We went from $600 million more than we had to $400 in the bank. That's responsible budgeting. That's responsible leadership. We have implemented what we call performance-based budgeting. I think Greg Snowden's going to talk to you a little bit more about that. This is a mechanism whereby we measure the results we get from the expenditure of your dollars. We take state dollars from you, tax dollars from you, and we spend them. Sometimes we get good results, and sometimes we don't. We want to measure that. Where are the tax dollars getting a return? And we want to shift those dollars from those areas that are not giving us a return and putting them in programs that do. Greg is going to talk more about that. That's something we've implemented over the last 4 years. We've done some improvements in education. We have passed a charter school bill, which creates educational opportunity for children in areas that may not have a quality school. It's an alternative. It's just another tool in the toolbox to be used to try to provide an educational opportunity for children. We put more money into education last year than ever in the history of our state. In any 1 year, $2.5 billion. That's more ever in the history of the state in any 1 year. Over the last 4 years, we put $9.5 billion into education. That is the largest amount over any 4-year term in the history of our state. We gave a teacher pay raise for the first time in 7 years. We implemented the 3rd grade reading gate, which requires children, shoots for the goal of requiring children to be able to read on grade level by the time they exit to 3rd grade. We want to look at the funding formula. I served on the school board for 11 years in Clinton. I know the frustration as a school board member to be told you're going to get X number of dollars and then you don't get it. 1 year, I think Ronnie Musgrove was the governor, we had to cut budgets mid-year because the money didn't come in like we were told it was going to be. We didn't have the money we told we were going to have. And we had to make budget cuts. That's a difficult thing to do in mid-year. So we want to come forward. Part of the problem with the formula is that it's been very hard to achieve. So we want to come forward with a formula that can give schools certainty as to how much money they're going to get so they can budget properly. That's the biggest complaint I get from superintendents is we don't know how much money we're going to have, so we can't plan properly. We want to be able to help them in that. So I think we're going to be looking at a new funding formula that will give them a little more certainty. Tell you one funny story. When I was on the school board, we would talk about budgets and there would be nobody at the meeting. We would talk about buying $500,000 worth of school buses. Nobody would be at the meeting. We talk about curriculum. Nobody would be at the meeting. One night we made a motion to change a cheerleader policy. 31 people showed up at the next school board meeting, worried about what we were going to do with the cheerleaders. So I understand the frustrations that school boards go through and the things they're trying to accomplish. We want to make sure that education can be the best it can be in this state. And you're going to see us moving forward, looking at a lot of ways, a lot of reforms that we can implement to try to make education the best it can be. That's the start of job creation. When we go out and recruit companies to come to Mississippi, or we talk to many of you about expanding your operations and many of you about your businesses, number one thing we get is educated workforce. I got to have people who can come and work in my factory and who are competent and who are trained and who can do the job. And that's what we need to be about, creating those workers, giving them a skill, preparing them to be educated and able to do the jobs that they're called upon to do. And it all begins with a quality education at the K-12 level. So you're going to see more of the same. These are some of the things that we are going to continue over the next 4 years. I think the election results indicate that the people of the state like the direction that we've led over the last 4 years. We have faced attacks from many anti-business groups, many of whom wanted to remove the legislature from the process. We fought off those attacks. We have, I think you're going to see the most business-friendly House of Representatives you have ever seen in the history of our state. They have, as I said, we were able to fight back anti-business attacks, and we are now poised, I think, with an increase in number that we're going to see some positive things moving forward. and increased focus on jobs and workforce development, and hopefully positioning ourselves in a way to be very prosperous in the state of Mississippi. So I invite MEC to be a part of that. I invite you to come alongside of us to help us as we seek to improve education in Mississippi. I invite you to support the reforms that we bring forward. I invite you to support the job ideas we bring forward. I invite you to support the direction that we are leading. And I think together, with the help of business leaders like yourselves and the leadership of the legislature, we're going to see Mississippi become the most prosperous state that it's ever been in our history. Thank you so much for letting me be with you here today.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, in addition to the Speaker being elected when the session kicked off, they also elected other leadership in both the House and the Senate. Our next speaker is the new President Pro Tem of the Senate, Terry Burton, who's from Newton. And anyone who's been around the legislative process knows that Terry is a go-to guy when it comes to needing to know how the process works, whether it be about the committees he's served on, which is elections, energy, so many, or the budget. He is a guy that can help you craft what you need to do to make something happen. So we're very fortunate to have him here with us this morning. Please welcome Senator Terry Burton.
Thank you, Scott. It's really good to see a lot of familiar faces here this morning. When you've been here as long as I have, 25 years, you have a tendency to wonder if you're still welcome, you know, but I really feel welcome here today. Tommy Delaney and Freddie Bagley and people that we've known all our lives, and we appreciate the opportunity to work with you and for you over the years. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you, Scott, for those words, by the way, and it's an honor and privilege to have been elected by your peers, as the Speaker said, to represent their interest as being the senator's senator, that individual that they will come to as we build the coalition that we need to build to make sure the policies of our leader, the Lieutenant Governor, the great Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves, are done and seen and are achieved. The fact of the matter is we have a very, very business-friendly Lieutenant Governor and Senate. We have for years. Under Tate Reeves' leadership, it's even more so, because he realizes that, and he'll tell you this himself, as he likes to say in his speeches, that we don't create jobs. We create the environment for y'all to create jobs. And you are the engine that moves this train of policy down the track. And we have good policies that we are developing and we're working on right now to try to make sure that we get even better. I know the Speaker said he played quarterback on the scout team. Well, I didn't play quarterback. You can look at me and probably tell that. But I have been a utility player as on the baseball team. If they needed a right fielder, call Burton. They needed a catcher, call Burton. And I've done that over the years. And I think that lends me the opportunity to have seen how things work from the other side. And I hope as a leader in the Senate, as the Chief Lieutenant for Lieutenant Governor Reeves, that we can continue to work with every Energy Committee, Appropriations Committee, all of those committees that we've been associated with over the years, that we can continue to work with those committees in some capacity to make sure that we are doing the right things for business development and doing the right things for the good people of this great state. It's an honor and privilege to serve as the counterpart to another good East Central Mississippi guy, and that's my friend Greg Snowden. He used to be a constituent of mine, by the way. But Greg and I have worked, that's right. Greg and I go back to JC days, way back in the day, and we've been friends for a long, long time, and it's great to know that we're going to have the opportunity to work together in these roles that we've been selected to serve in. You know, Newton County's been good to me. The state of Mississippi has been good to me, and anything I can do to repay that, to pay it forward, as they say, and try to make sure that my grandchildren, I even have a great-granddaughter who's 16 months old, to make sure that they have a better opportunity than I had, that we leave this place in a better way than we found it. That's my goal, and I know that we have the leadership in the House and Senate to make those decisions, to make that possible, to make for a good future for our children, grandchildren, and generations to come. Thank you so very much for your work and what you do, and thank you for having me here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Burton. As I said, our next speaker was just elected as the Speaker Pro Tem of the House of Representatives, and he was elected to his second term in that role. And what we have seen in that first term is that he's not afraid to take on tough issues. And I think anybody that knows Greg Snowden will tell you he has never been one to shy away from anything, and that's the reason the leadership that he has is the reason the confidence that the House had to put him back in that role again. As Senator Burton mentioned, he is from Meridian. He is also a University of Alabama graduate. Please welcome Representative Greg Snowden.
In the House of Representatives, we have, I don't know how many new members you have in the Senate. Oh, you are still here. Sorry about that. I apologize, Mr. Speaker. In the House of Representatives, we have 26 new members. We have a lot of new faces. And I know in the Senate they have quite a few new members. I would ask you, as much as anything, as we get started in this process, try to remember that. We have some new folks. Every one of them were elected to make a difference. They feel very strongly about what they're here for. They're going to do a great job. It takes a little while to ease into that sometimes. So I would ask you to exercise a little patience, not only with the new members, but with the older members, because we're dealing with new people. The dynamic is completely different. And we need a little time, and hopefully you'll be gracious enough to grant us a little bit to get things going like they should. We feel confident we can hit the ground running, but again, we've got new people that are not familiar with the process, as they will be soon. So we would ask you to maybe be a little patient with us. I was asked, you have these erstwhile friends, I was asked, what are you speaking about today, Snowden? You're going to be talking about changing the state flag, or raising the gasoline tax, or perhaps same-sex marriage licenses. I guess I've got a little bit of a reputation as a Mr. Controversy after last year. I think it was because when I addressed you last year, as you recall, I did address you about the Initiative 42 issue. It was a very important issue. It was the beginning of a process that lasted all year. Soon after I addressed you, the legislature, House and Senate, took up an legislative alternative to that. And I want to particularly thank, I know as an organization you didn't take a position, but many of you in this room as individuals did participate in that debate and helped us make the case why we did not need and should not adopt that change to the Constitution. And for those of you that did, I want to sincerely thank you on behalf of myself, and I'm sure of many others as well, but for taking that position and being active in that, engaged in that debate. It was very important. I want to talk to you about today something that is probably more important, in all honesty. In fact, I have said that, and I believe this very, very well may be the most significant thing we do in our legislative careers, and that is what the legislature now, House and Senate together, are doing to implement performance-based budgeting for the state of Mississippi. The Speaker alluded to this. This is extremely important. It shouldn't be controversial, although I anticipate it's going to meet with some resistance because change does that. Part of when I was accepting my election the other day, I talked about the difference between authority and leadership, and I made the point, at least I hope I made the point, that one of the things about authority is it's protective of your norms. That's just what you do. Leadership, on the other hand, identifies unproductive norms and challenges that. And so leadership is in some ways much more difficult than authority. And in fact, it's not the same thing, and sometimes contrary, because leadership gets you outside of your norm. Authority is about protecting the organization. Leadership is about challenging the organization. So it's a challenge before us. So we may have some blowback on it, but it's critically important what we're doing performance-based budgeting. It's a really pretty simple idea. It's when we make decisions on funding something, money we're spending, your money that we're spending, that we have some evidence-based, some data-driven, program-level analysis that supports that this dollar we're spending, your dollar, is actually going to achieve what we hope it will achieve, what we expect it to achieve. It's a matter of even your best guess. You're funding this program because it feels like it ought to work, and people like the program, and they're telling you, man, this is great, but you don't really have any performance metrics. You don't have any way of analyzing that to see if it's actually achieving the result that we want. So the state of Mississippi has embarked on what's called results first, It's I guess you would call it a program. It's an initiative, really, of the Pew Charitable Trust and MacArthur Foundation. They're having, I think about 20 states now they're involved in this. We're kind of on the cutting edge of that, state of Mississippi. And the idea is to develop performance-based standards so that we can have some surety that when we spend your dollar, we're spending it on something that will work. Now, we use data to do this, and we need to drive down to get the program level data to be able to make these decisions. I'll give you an example, and I'm not picking on mental health, it just come to mind. Mental health, if you come in to, say, our budget meetings, they may make a proposal for an additional facility, new hospital, number of staff. Well, that's all well and good, and they probably need those things, and we understand that. But the question we really want to ask and have them answer is, how many people are you making better? How are you going about that? What programs are you utilizing that facilitate that? Show us how people are getting better. That's what the mental health department is about. It's about making people better. And those are the sorts of questions we want to ask throughout state government at a very fundamental program level basis and have some evidence that will support doing that. Some quick examples. So you may remember, many of you remember the Scared Straight program. I don't know if we ever had it all that active in Mississippi, but Scared Straight was a program where you would take young people, teenagers, high schoolers, take them out to the prison and let them see how awful it was out there. And they would learn how awful the prisons were, and they'd never want to go there, and it would scare them into being straight. That's the idea. Feels like it ought to work. Pretty good idea, right? And it had the benefit of not being that expensive either on a per person basis. So it's money you can spend, and you can, well, you know, when they did the work on this and the data came in and they analyzed this, they found out not only did it not work, it actually had a counteractive effect. They go out there and they see many of the people from the whole neighborhood, you know, and everybody looks cool out there. They're kind of being led down a road that we didn't want them to be led in. It was actually counterproductive to what we expected it to do. On the other hand, there's some relatively expensive programs that we can institute. Expensive when I mean the bottom line of the budget. One that comes to mind is kind of an in-house drug treatment for prisoners. You know, you've got a captive audience there, no pun intended. They're going to attend, they're going to participate. That's relatively expensive, but when you do the analysis that these people can do to show the societal benefit, you basically are looking at recidivism, those that don't show up as compared to people that don't go through this. You see that even though that's expensive as a bottom line on your budget, it's really a great impact and a great value for society. So those are the types of decisions that we're going to try to be making. Drug courts are another example. We know drug courts nationwide, if they're run correctly within the parameters that are set out for best practices, if they're run correctly, they work. They reduce recidivism, and they are a progressive sort of thing to implement. However, if you don't run them in accordance with the standards where they need to be run, they don't have the effect. We have, and I'm not going to call them out, but at least one, I think perhaps two drug court districts within the state of Mississippi. They were running a drug court, and you know, everybody involved was you know, good. They were good people. They were running this program, but they were outside of the stand. They were, for one thing, they were cherry picking their population. And when you do that, you know, we think these people will do well. Well, you really can't do too much of that, or you're really not getting the overall impact and that you need out of a program such as that. They also were keeping people in the program longer than necessary. And so when you laid all that out, the cost analysis of it and the benefit, that drug court really was not succeeding very well. So that's a matter of learning that from your analysis, learning that from your data, and then implementing a regimen where they have to abide by these best practices and have to fall within the parameters, because when they do that, drug courts work. We know that from the data. Finally, we've already used this, particularly in corrections, the Regimented Discipline Program, RID program. We eliminated that last year. That was a program that a lot of people seemed to think was working, and all our data showed that it was not. And so it's something that allowed us to do. I'm going to wrap up here, but I'm going to point out to you, some of this is available online. Our peer committee, legislative peer committee, it really is our point organization within the legislature to deal with the results first. A lot of this information is available online. You can see the statewide plan where we identify well, first of all, we inventory the programs. We couldn't find out how many programs there were that state agencies ran. The state agencies didn't know. So one of the things you do is inventory your programs so you know how many you have. Then you derive performance benchmarks and metrics for each of those, and it fits in with the statewide plan of our overall goals and objectives for every level of state government. This is not something that happens overnight. You understand that. It's something that's going to take a matter of years, but when we succeed in doing this, and I'm proud to say the Senate and the House worked as well together on this as just about anything I've ever seen. Everybody understands the significance and the importance of this. I think we're just now getting the attention of the public, and perhaps a little more so of the media, that this is really a big deal. This is a big deal. Just because it's not happening all at once, this is a big deal. You're going to be hearing more and more about it as we move forward. And I just encourage you to find out as much as you can about it and to be supportive of it. There are going to be some state agencies that are going to give us some blowback because it's different. We're requiring them to gather data that they haven't had to gather before, or do certain things they haven't had to do before. But at the bottom line, at the end of the day, we're going to be able, hopefully, to make more important decisions about what we fund and what we don't fund, and make sure that the dollars you send up here, we make work and are not just putting them off into something that we hope works, but something we have some surety that it will work. So that's on the horizon. That's happening now. I'm very excited about that, as much as you can be excited about something wonky like that. But I'm glad to share that with you. And again, go online. If you're interested in this, look, it's the peer committee, and you can find some of these publications, tell you a little bit more about this. And well, I'll be happy to answer any questions about it later if you want to call me. Anytime you'd like to do that, I'd be proud to talk to you. Thank you again so much for being there. One thing I meant to say that I failed to mention, I do want to also congratulate my friend, Senator Terry C. Burton, who's the new President Pro Tem of the Senate. Have known Terry for many years and look forward to working with him as my counterpart, really, and I'm his counterpart in the respective bodies. I do want to congratulate Terry. Thank you so much.